Right, good evening, everybody. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers, and good evening, members of the public for attending this meeting. Just one last member to attend, and hopefully Councillor Beavis will be arriving shortly. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. If we're not expecting a fire alarm tonight, so if the alarm goes off, we'll need to exit by fire exit behind you in the corner. And then please could you just make sure your mobile phones are switched to silent. Thank you very much. So item 1 this evening, apologies for absence. We have three apologies. Councillor Hayes, who's being substituted by Councillor Bowers. Councillor Hooks, who's been substituted by Councillor Wright. Councillor Holland, we don't have a substitute for him, and I'm hoping that Councillor Beavis will arrive shortly. So we'll now move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. This is do any members have wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items of the agenda having regard to the Code of Conduct. Before I move, I will just make a joint declaration on behalf of us all in relation to Mr Hobbs, who I think is known to many of us. Thank you. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I declare an interest, please, in item 5D, application 23-01016, Full Critter Drive. The land is owned by Brent City Council, and as portfolio member for economic development, I shall not be part of the debate, and I won't vote either, so I shall remove myself from the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I might just move on to Councillor Bowers first and then come to Councillor Ray. Sorry.
Similar declaration of interest at item 5D, Full Critter Drive, and it's an MPI as I'm the Cabinet Member for Property and Asset Estate Management at Braintree District Council, and as it's our application, I will also leave the meeting, for transparency, I will leave the meeting at that point. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. And Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest in item 6, which is Tree Preservation Order 01/2023, the Station Road Earls Cone one. I had a meeting with the applicants. It was towards the end of last year to discuss a number of planning issues, including the hedge, which is referred to in tonight's application. And although the trees and the TPO were not actually in place at that stage, I have discussed this with officers, and I do think, for the sake of transparency and so on, I will declare a DPI, so I will leave the meeting and not take part or vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Application number 22024094, Cox's Yard Rain Road. The speaker this evening, I have been in previous correspondence as a county councillor, so there has been correspondence, but not about this planning application. What this planning application has thrown up, though, is an answer to the problem that he was talking to me about. And in application, the tree preservation order, land adjacent to Meadowcroft Station Road, I know the applicant from when I was chairman of the council and held a golfing day there, but obviously I've not spoken to her about this either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Application 23101016, following Councillor Bowers' declaration, I'm Deputy Cabinet to him, but I will stay and vote.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer. Any other members have any interest to declare? Right, I assume that is no. So we'll now move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Members, I have two sets of minutes before me this evening. They are the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 18th of April and also the last meeting, which was on the 4th of July. I believe that even though you were not a member of the Planning Committee on the 18th of April, some of you weren't, you're still able to vote on this. So could I have a move that that those are a correct record?
I have to move.
Councillor Abbott. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you, members. I shall sign those minutes now. This moves us on to item 4, which is public question time. We don't have any registered speakers on matters in general, so we'll move on now to item 5, which are planning applications. Having had the declarations from Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Bowers, I have decided that we will move item 5D, which is application number 23/01016 full, which is at 4 Crittall Drive, Braintree. And we're going to move that to the end of the agenda. That is an application that's only come before us because the applicant is Braintree District Council. So that will be the last, we'll go from 5C to item 6. So the first application this evening is application number 22/02409 full, which is Cox's Yard, Rain Road in Braintree. We have one speaker this evening, who is Mr. Barry Williamson. If you'd like to come to the table and put your microphone on. And Mr. Williamson, you have 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good evening. The application for the improvement of Cox's Yard is welcomed. It is requested that the proposal be amended to prevent or at least greatly reduce the loss of privacy to number 3 Panfield Lane. The rear west property of Panfield Lane is immediately adjacent to the development site. This private garden space and house is fully viewable from the 8 north-facing windows of the proposed residential blocks. Blocks 4 to 7 and 8 to 11 are shown as being only 2.5 metres from the listed property. Despite this design being contrary to the Essex Design Guide, it has been supported by the Planning Department. They say the development does result in the potential for some overlooking of the garden of number 3. However, given the similarities of the scheme with that of the previously granted application, it would be unreasonable for officers to recommend refusal of the application due to the impact of neighbouring amenity. We are not objecting to the development, but would appreciate consideration. Relating to the above, I comment as follows. There is no reason to consider current proposals are acceptable just because the Planning Office erroneously recommended approval of a previous application. The Planning Office have clearly ignored the privacy and amenity of Panfield House. Consideration should be given to the listed building in the conservation area. The revisions on the current application create a situation whereby the 8 north-facing windows to the new flats can be repositioned to avoid overlooking the private garden and house. It is an established fact that north-facing windows are not ideal in any building. It is suggested that the overlooking windows be relocated to the east and west walls to improve the light to the flats. The Planning Office regularly require that proposals be amended to include obscured glazing or high-level windows to prevent overlooking of private spaces. There is no evidence of any such requirement in this instance. They openly endorse the provision of windows 2.5 metres from the listed building boundary, giving clear vision to the whole of the garden and house at number 3. This would be totally to the detriment of the occupier of Panfield House. In law, there is no right to a view, but the Planning Office is sanctioning the right for the first floor flat owners to enjoy the gardens of number 3 as a right. It has been suggested that the windows viewing into the garden of number 3 be relocated from the north walls to the east and west walls. The owners of number 3 should not have to sacrifice their privacy to enhance the development under construction.
Mr. Williamson, do you have... No. Oh, I've just finished. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williamson. So we have no more speakers on this application, so we'll now move to the presentation from Officer Lisa Page. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. This is a full application for the redevelopment of Cox's Yard. The application includes the demolition of the existing showroom, which is number 16 Rain Road, and in its place the erection of a two-storey building incorporating 1 Class E commercial unit and 3 flats. The application also includes the refurbishment of number 18 Road to create 2 residential units and the erection of 2 semi-detached dwellings that would front onto Panfield Lane. There'd be associated on-plot parking, demolition of existing commercial buildings on the site and the erection of 8 flats, together with amenity space, landscaping, refuse, cycle storage and parking provision. The site address is Cox's Yard, Rain Road in Braintree. So here is the location plan, the site edged in red. The site lies within the development boundary in the town centre of Braintree. The site has a frontage to the east or the northeast here to Panfield Lane and to the south with Braintree Road. Surrounding uses to the north and northwest are primarily residential, with the allotment site where my cursor is, and to the east and the west are commercial. So the site is located within the conservation area. To the north, as we've heard, here is the listed building. Number 3 and number 5 to 7 Panfield Lane are listed, and the Horse and Groom Public House, where my cursor is here to the southwest, is also a listed building. So looking at the existing block plan, as you can see, the site previously contained a number of buildings. So these are these sort of grey, light grey hatched buildings. Some of these have already been demolished. Those which remain are single-storey, is a single-storey garage structure here where my cursor lies, and this commercial building that fronts onto Braintree Road. Turning to the proposed block plan, on the Braintree Road frontage, number 18, here where it says plots 13 to 14 is retained, extended and converted to create 2 one-bed units. This unit here, which is now plots 1 to 3, is the former commercial building that's to be demolished and rebuilt for 1 commercial unit and 3 flats. At the rear of the site here, so to that northern boundary, are these 2 blocks which each contain 4 one-bed units. On Panfield Lane, we've got 2 semi-detached pair, 2-bed units. One of these units here, so plot 16, would benefit from on-plot parking, whilst the other unit, plot 15, would have allocated space within this courtyard parking area. Vehicular access to the central parking area is via Braintree Road, off an existing access, and the centre of the site provides parking for 15 vehicles. Within this central area, there's a shared refuse and cycle store provided for the flats, and that's located here. The 2 dwellings themselves would have cycle provision within their garden, so you can just see this sort of small rectangular secure store for the cycle, and they would also have refuse within their curtilage. So this is a number 18, so the existing building that's to be refurbished. We can see it's sort of retains this traditional shopfront appearance and has a rear extension. In terms of the floor plan, you'd have a home office, your kitchen, diner on the ground floor, and a living room and bedroom and first floor with the bathroom. This now is the rebuilt block on Braintree Road that follows the demolition of the commercial unit. So again, 2-storey in scale, constructed in brick and render, and it contains architectural features. So this chimney adds to the street scene, and this new shopfront feature would be created. So this shopfront here is the Class E use, which is supported by offices because the site's located within the primary shopping frontage, and it would add to the vitality and viability of the town centre. On floor plan, so here at the front you would see that commercial unit, so that shop front I was just referring to. Behind that is a 1-bed unit, and on first floor 2 further 1-bed units. Turning here to the existing and the proposed street scene, so you can see how this existing commercial unit does not positively relate to the street scene, so no objection there to its demolition, and officers are content that this would create a high quality replacement building that would positively add to the street scene and the conservation area with no harm to the listed Horse and Groom Public House. So looking at, these are the elevations, front elevation of the 2 blocks, flatted blocks at the rear, so you can see again 2-storey in scale. sort of well-balanced proportions of fenestration. These are the rear elevations, so just picking up on what the neighbour was just referring to. So here you can see the smaller windows in the centre are the bathroom windows, and then these windows on the outer wall are the bedroom windows. So here again on floor plan, ground floor here, and then the first floor. So what we're proposing is that these bathroom windows here on the first floor would be obscure glaze, and what reference has been made would be to these bedroom windows, creating this overlooking. Turning now to Panfield Lane. These are the two semi-detached block that's proposed to be built. So these are modest units in terms of their scale, size, design and materials. They'd relate well to existing development on Panfield Lane. It's considered that this would result in a positive infill development on the Panfield Lane and contribute positively to the street scene. Again, would be a positive addition to the conservation area. This is just showing you the floor plans here. So again, kitchen, dining, living room at ground floor, and 2 bedrooms, bathroom at first. Here is just a quick image of the proposed refuse and cycle store. So again, central to the site. This would be black boarded and a tiled roof. Again, officers are content that this provides adequate refuse and cycle provision for the flats. I've included here the landscape plan. So this just shows a general approach to hard and soft landscaping. You can see it includes in the centre of the site the tarmac driveway, with parking would be in block paving. So there is some provision of soft planting around the site to soften the development, so some along sort of this back edge of the parking space and along this sort of parking area here, and then some wider landscaping amenity for the flats, and then the dwellings would be provided with private garden amenity space. The red line here is indicated to be a high quality 1.8 metre high brick wall, so along here. So sort of in that public realm, it would positively add to the quality of the scheme. Other boundaries here are proposed to be 1.8 metre high fencing. In terms of condition, although we've got this landscape plan, a condition is imposed to ensure an appropriate specification for the hard and soft landscaping. Just turning quickly to some photographs here, just to set the scene. So this is a Braintree Road image. So you can see the existing number 18 that's proposed to be retained and refurbished. This is the building that would be demolished and rebuilt, and this is where the existing access is that would be retained. So now just a view back to the property, this number 18 that will be refurbished, and then on the left-hand side is that building to be demolished. So you can sort of start to get a view in terms of the quality and the impact that that building does have on the conservation area. This is just included, so where my cursor is here, it's a single-storey sort of wing coming off number 18. These have already been demolished, but it's just to give you really an indication as to the quality of the buildings that did remain on site. Again, another view taken more recently, just looking at the back of the site here. So here where the cursor is, you can see the back of number 3, the listed property. Just another view here looking towards Panfield Lane, towards the east. So the listed property on the left-hand side, and then this single-storey timber garage block that's due to be demolished. And that view just in a little bit more detail, so you can see the commercial units behind that are here where my cursor is. And now just a view looking west, so you can see the rear elevation of the detached building here, and just sort of get a sense of sort of the boundary. Another view now taken from Panfield Lane, so you can see the listed building in the background, and in the foreground here, those commercial uses. And then again, just sort of looking more directly into the plot to show how that pair of semi-detached dwellings would relate to the wider locality. So in terms of the member update, paragraph 1.8 in the committee report does say that the earlier permissions are extant, but actually that's a bit of an error, so it should actually say they have expired. So commentary later in the report does sort of allude to the fact that they have expired. The other point just to pick up for members this evening is paragraph 14.3.4. So when we're discussing the planning balance, under market housing it states that the scheme would deliver 15 units. However, there's already a unit on site that's due to be demolished as part of the redevelopment, and therefore the net gain on site is actually only 14 units. So just to be clear in terms of that and sort of the weight to be applied to that. And following on from that sort of change or clarification on the proposing only a net gain of 14 is a change therefore in terms of the Section 106 contributions. So the HRA habitat regulation assessment figure also alters to that set out here. And there's also a reclarification in terms of the open space contribution. And this is the total figure here, but I'll set that out on a later slide. In terms of the planning balance and the summary, the site is located within the defined development boundary of Braintree. It's an allocated site for residential development of 10 or more units. The buildings to be demolished are of poor condition and do not positively contribute to the conservation area or setting of listed buildings. The layout and detailed design would result in a high quality development with wider improvements to the conservation area. Positive weight is assigned to the delivery of, and that should be 14 residential units, with further weight assigned to the Class E unit, which is, as I already noted, in the primary shopping frontage. The Highway Authority have no objection to the proposal, subject to some conditions. And in terms of parking, although the proposal provides a shortfall of 1 space and no visitor spaces are provided, officers consider that given the town centre location and proximity to public car parks and public transport provision, it would not be objectionable. Amenity garden spaces provided for all the units in accordance with the Essex Design Guide standards, and all the units comply with nationally described space standards. Officers have raised in the report some criticism in terms of the outlook from some of the ground floor flats being restrictive, but on balance it is considered that the development would provide acceptable living accommodation for future occupiers. And just clarifying that revised recommendation then, so it's recommended that subject to the applicant entering to a legal agreement to cover the following heads of terms, the development would be acceptable. So as already detailed in the committee report, there's a financial contribution towards the NHS, and that figure remains as already set out. But there is a change, a clarification really in terms of the habitat regulation assessment fee. So as out here on the screen, this is now the revised figure. And similar for outdoor sports, equipped play, open space and allotment, because the figures set out in the committee report were based on 15 units rather than 14. Just to be clear, these are the revised figures. Now, just to update members, in terms of the Section 106, lengthy discussions have already been undertaken between the Council and the appellant, and matters in regards to the Section 106 are being finalised. So I apologise, that sort of jumps around a little bit there, but yeah, sort of just picking back up on the planning balance and the summary, as set out in the committee report, the development does result in the potential for some overlooking of the garden of number 3. However, there are similarities of the scheme with that previously granted, and there is existing landscaping within the garden of number 3 to reduce overlooking, and officers consider it would be unreasonable to refuse the application on neighbouring amenity. Otherwise, the development is acceptable in terms of ecology, contamination and flood risk, and our recommendation is to grant permission subject to conditions and the changes to that Section 106 legal agreement as set out on my earlier slide. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I'll pass it over to members for their views. Who'd like to kick off? Councillor Finken.
Could we ask the officer to respond specifically to the points made in the objector's presentation?
Lisa, could you just come back on that, please?
Yeah,
a bit more detail.
Yeah, that's no problem. Thank you. So, yes, very, very aware of the objection from the third party. Officers have been to have a look at the level of overlooking between the development site and that neighbour, and have sort of noted the relationship between the proposed building and existing landscaping. So I think sort of as set out in the committee report, I think officers acknowledge that there would be a level of overlooking between the properties, between the first floor bedroom windows and number 3's garden. So not necessarily into the dwelling itself, but some overlooking in the garden. But I think given weight to that earlier permission and existing landscaping within number 3's garden, I think we feel it would be unreasonable to make a recommendation for refusal on that point, but it is a matter that would weigh against the merits of the application. And we've also had regard to the comments made in terms of whether there was the opportunity to re-site some of those bedroom windows. I think the difficulty with that is that although it may then overcome overlooking into that garden, but if you put them on the east, for instance, it would then create overlooking directly into the garden of the new plots onto Panfield Lane, and it just creates sort of other amenity issues, really. So we have sort of fully had regard to it, and we feel that on balance, our recommendation for approval stands.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Given it's a town centre site, I suppose we're going to expect relatively high density and a relatively urban form, and this is clearly an improvement on what was there before. I don't think anyone disputes that. But I think it could have been better. I mean, two of the things I think we could have seen was, given the previous consent had a similar overlooking problem, why the opportunity wasn't taken with this one to negotiate less overlooking of the objector's property. Secondly, given that we're supposed to be, as the government tells us, in the era of creating beautiful spaces, the landscaping is minimal. There appears to be very little tree planting, and we could see evidence of what looked like the remains of a tree had been cut down. So I think that's disappointing. Doesn't appear to be any renewable energy, unless officers can tell us otherwise. And yet again, we have the NHS saying it doesn't have capacity, and I know what you will say, Madam Chairman, £6,000 being offered to support the new residents of this development. So some of those things we have no control over, but I think it would have been a better development if some of those other factors could have been worked in. I'll hear what other members say, but I'm minded to support it. But I would ask officers a question: is there any wriggle room for improving the landscaping? Thank you.
Lisa, can you just come back on the landscaping point then?
Yeah, thank you. So that landscaping master plan that I did share is down as an approved plan. But in addition to that, we have got a condition that requires sort of fine-tuning of that, I guess. So although that's indicating 2 trees to replace what has previously been removed from the site, there may be more scope to get more tree planting on there. But in terms of removing any hard standing to create soft planting, I don't think there's scope to do that, given that we've sort of agreed that layout and that number of parking spaces.
Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Gowsland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could we go back to the picture of the... Well, actually, the last picture will suffice, where you see the fence near the lamppost. That's it. That lamppost is a problem because for some miracle the fence has been put the path side of that lamppost, but that lamppost belongs to Essex County Council, and that's been the problem because the County Council have not been able to gain access to the property to rectify it. So whatever means that you have as officers on this planning application, that lamppost needs to be accessible, not just removed, so that the path is lit up at night for the residents using that footpath. Thank you. But I also endorse what Councillor Abbott said about the landscaping. It is very, very minimal, and it's an opportunity to put some more trees in, and I'm not sure we're taking that greatest opportunity of making it look softer in a town centre, whilst I welcome the application because, as has been said, that site is an absolute mess. It's an eyesore and has been for years, and providing 1-bedroom flats will be a fantastic idea in the town centre for the younger people who struggle to get accommodation. So I fully support that, but Can I just check with the officer as well? Did she say the bedroom windows are going to be obscure glaze as well as the bathroom, or just the bathrooms?
Yeah, it'd just be the bathroom windows, sorry. So there's on each rear elevation at the first floor, there's 4 windows, so 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom. It'd be the 2 bathroom on each block that would be obscure glazed.
Lisa, are you able to, is there anything we can do about the lamp post and any controls that we can, or make sure that lamp post is moved? I'm not sure.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies for the delay. Yeah, in terms of the lamppost, it isn't a matter that has been discussed previously. But if they're looking to move it, it would need to have agreement from ECC, so Essex County Council, to get that. I think we'd be happy to put an informative on there to say, sort of just make reference to it so the developer is aware of it. And just coming back, sorry, if we can, on the landscaping point, I think acknowledge what you're both saying, Councillor Abbott is saying in terms of potential, or is there scope to get additional landscaping on there. I think there would be, but it would be at the expense of parking. So I think it would be for members to determine sort of that balance between providing adequate parking and sort of appropriate soft landscaping for the site.
Any members wish to lose a parking space? I think probably not. That certainly wouldn't meet, doesn't meet the parking standards as it is, so it would be even further deficit. Any other member wish to, Councillor Wright?
Is there any provision for vehicle charging points, electric vehicle charging points on site, or solar panels? Because being one-bedroom places, I thought would have been an ideal opportunity to put solar panels on the roof to bring down the cost of living.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of the electric vehicle charging, we've got a condition on there which requires a one electric vehicle charging point for each of the dwellings. So those 2 dwellings on Panfield Lane, there's a condition to require that they are both provided with electric vehicle charging provision. And then the condition also asks for a strategy for electric vehicle charging for the rest of the development, so that all the flats, there would be potential provision for that. So there's a condition that covers that. In terms of the solar panels, that isn't something that officers have been discussing with the developer in terms of redesigning when they've designed the scheme. I think in terms of that sustainability to credentials, it's very much a fabric first approach rather than sort of the provision of solar panels.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other member wish to make any comment on this application? I assume that's no. Would anybody like to move anything? Anybody like to move approval? Councillor Spray?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll move approval. I didn't comment on it, but other than the landscaping, which is a shame, I really welcome this application. So I'll move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ritchie. That has been moved by Councillor Spray, seconded by Councillor Ritchie. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we'll now move on to the next application this evening. So this is application number 5B, application number 22/03266 full, which is land adjacent to Nightingale's Farm, Brickhouse Lane, Colne Gain. And we do have a number of speakers on this application. The first speaker is Mr. Bill Keneally, who is going to be giving his presentation remotely. Mr. Keneally, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
So if you'd like to go ahead and with your statement should be no more than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bill Keneally and I'm the owner of the Old Cottage, Brickhouse Road, which is next door to the proposed development immediately to the right. I reside here with my wife and my 2 boys, and we wholeheartedly object to the applicant's proposal. Brickhouse Road is an historic road of approximately 1 mile in length. There are 14 houses along the road, with the majority being period properties, with some in excess of 300 years old. The oldest known house in the parish of Conangain is number 1 Brickhouse Road, which is believed to have been built at the end of the 13th century. Brickhouse Farm, who the road takes its name from, dates from the 16th century, to name just a few. The applicant has not considered in any detail the negative economic and social impact that the proposal will bring with the significant increase in vehicle movements. While their statement says that the proposal would result in 4 additional vehicle movements per day, that equals 2,912 additional HGVs, horse boxes, 4x4s, trailers, etc. per year. The application goes on to say that the proposal would employ 3 permanent employees plus 1 part-time. These employees will drive to work every day, therefore creating a further 2,912 additional vehicle movements. In total, a staggering increase of 5,824 additional HGVs, horse boxes, 4x4s with trailers and cars will be introduced onto Brickhouse Road each year. With this significant increase in vehicle movement comes the negative economic and social impact on these period properties through increased repair and maintenance costs brought about from enhanced vibration, which further poses a risk to the long-term future of these locally historic properties. The negative economic and social impact on the volume of walkers who use the road. These walkers, which range from local people of all ages, tourists, youth groups and hikers that use the road for pleasure and is so quiet, allow their children to pedal or run on ahead, allow dogs to range further from them, and horse riders who use the road as a safe and quiet route. These walkers start in the early hours as when I leave for work at 6 a.m. and during the summer are still walking until dusk. The negative economic and social impact on Brickhouse Farm, the applicant's old property, a similar facility to that proposed. Brickhouse Farm, which is still run as an established dressage and livery, and whose horse riders use the road for short periods of time. However, our primary reason for objecting to the applicant's proposal is due to us having a severely autistic son. When we chose to buy the Old Cottage, it was due to his condition, and the peacefulness of this location meant that his mental health was catered for. He currently lives at home 24/7 and struggles to access the outside world. He has 2 carers with him during the day that must be on hand to deal with meltdowns caused by traffic noises, periodic road and construction works, drones flying nearby, simple things such as having the cesspit emptied or the washing machine on. The impact of the noise generated from the construction of the applicant's facility and then from the running of the venue would be so detrimental to his mental health and therefore our family life that we cannot support this in any way.
Mr. Keneally, we've got your statement in front of us. I would really like to try to limit speakers to 3 minutes because otherwise the meeting does go on for an awful long time.
Yeah.
Would you like to just very quickly, I don't know if there's any additional point in your last paragraph, but we do have a statement for us and we have read it. So I think unless you've got anything additional to say, I think we'll leave it there.
Could I just complete the last paragraph?
Could you just quickly summarise that paragraph? Because
yeah, no problem. So every resident along Brickhouse Road has objected to this development. Most of the people who objected live locally, and the Conangain Parish Council, in effect, the whole village, bar 1 or 2. The Parish Council have stated that they object as the increased traffic movement is unacceptable on a rural narrow road. Remember, almost 6,000 extra vehicle movements per year. The 31 positive supporting comments come from as far afield as Scotland, Alton.
Mr. Keneally, I think I'm going to stop you there because I did ask you to summarise that last paragraph, but you're just reading it out. So we've got your points. Thank you very much.
Okay,
we'll now move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Mr. Dan Lear. If you'd like to come to the table, and again, 3 minutes, please. Thank you. Yes, just press. Yeah.
Good evening. Most of my objections were obviously carried out within the objection that I wrote. This is taken from the executive statement that was posted. Item 1.2, the LPP 5.1 has not been satisfied under all 5 points. Whilst sections C and E do, A states that there is no significance to the landscape. This is completely incorrect with the scale and volume of the development. B states vehicle movements, again, as the previous objector stated, up to 6,000 additional ones per year. And D is grazing. The applicant's field does not have enough grazing. The British Horse Society states between 1 and 1.5 acres per horse, and with the size of the development, with the outdoor school that's being built, there is nowhere near 1 to 1.5 acres per houses. Section 5.4 states that properties nearby are not listed. This is completely incorrect, as the applicants do know that they used to own Brickhouse Farm. It is actually Grade 2 listed, so there is listed properties within the area of the development. And item 6.1 states that Brickhouse Farm cannot meet the needs of what the proposed development is going to do. The proposed development is being pushed as a para yard. This isn't available to the general public. It was actually myself and my wife, when we purchased Brickhouse Farm some 5 years ago, that put the facilities in for the para riders, which there was none previously. None of the para athletes that were on livery on the yard were able to access toilets or galleries or any other facilities the yard offered until we moved in. That's me done. Under 3.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lear. I think we're just changing the microphone, but if the next speaker would like to come, which is Mrs. Susanna Wade. Hopefully that is working. If you'd like to. Good evening, sir.
My name is Susanna Wade. I am a Grade 1 most severely disabled athlete with a spinal injury causing paralysis, so have to use a wheelchair 100% of the time. For the last 10 years, I have been coached and supported by Aisling Dressage, who sourced and trained my horse.
I think trouble with the microphone.
Who sourced and trained my horses for me to become national champion and successful international athlete competing for Great Britain. It is well documented that Aisling Dressage over the last 20 years has been a very successful business with world-class coaching in the para dressage discipline. It requires a particular quiet, controlled environment with indoor facilities and easy access to enable a wheelchair to get around for a para-athlete to train safely. The applicant's dedication to providing world-class training for para-equestrians is at the heart of this proposed development. I welcome the fact that access to the countryside is made available to all in a diverse and non-discriminatory way. It is proven that inclusion in sport and access to the countryside can help people be healthier, improve their mental health, help them socially and more. Coming from a farming background, I care deeply about countryside preservation and sustainability. I personally feel that a vibrant rural economy that supports and provides local jobs and access to all should be how it evolves. We cannot mothball our countryside, and an equestrian development of this nature is a very good balance of supporting our rural economy and providing access to all within a sympathetic, sustainable way. I therefore hope that the committee members will support this application.
Thank you, Mrs Wade. The next speaker is Mr Jonathan Brown. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors. The applicants, Michelle and Meta Asseline, are the owners of Asseline Dressage, which has been located at Brickhouse Road since 2005. The proposal provides an exciting opportunity to introduce a new development that will support the local and national economy by providing an outstanding equestrian facility which will thrive and further raise the profile of their business in the local area. The Asselines are internationally renowned dressage trainers who have produced many Olympic and Paralympic horses and riders and national champions. Since 2005, Michelle Asseline spent 12 years as head coach to the multi-medal winning British Para-Equestrian Dressage programme, where he led GB athletes to 4 silver and 7 gold medals at the Rio 2016 Paralympics and team gold at the 3 previous Paralympic Games, which was a record-breaking achievement leading to Michelle being awarded the Musabini Medal and being inducted into the UK Coaching Hall of Fame. In 2017, Michelle was appointed by US Equestrian as head of Para-Equestrian Coach Development and High Performance Coaching. He returned from the 2021 Paralympic Games in Tokyo and 2022 World Championships in Denmark with multiple medals and team bronze. This proposal comprises a specialised facility with only 8 stables, which is intended to serve elite and upcoming para riders and will not therefore interfere with the viability of other equestrian facilities within the area. The proposal includes numerous features which are specifically designed to cater for para riders, making this a unique and exciting prospect for future riders. The Asselines previously owned and ran their business from the equestrian facilities at Brickhouse Farm, but the formed collaboration with the new owners and working alongside the wider operation there proved difficult for para-athletes. This site is located to the east of a cluster of dwellings with the land falling away to the east, so the ridge height of the proposed buildings lies significantly lower than the nearby dwellings. The applicants have positively engaged with the council from the earliest stage, submitting a pre-application inquiry in May 2020. The application was submitted in February 2021 and November 2022, and during the course of the applications, the applicants have gone to great lengths to engage with the planning team at the council. I'll try to summarise because I realise I'm slightly behind, if that's all right. A number of surveys and revised sets of plans have been produced, 3 different architects, which have all resulted from collaboration with the council's urban design team. So no stones been left unturned. Unfortunately, there's been quite an aggressive smear campaign from one objector, which has led to a number of sort of sad, quite social media false accusations and agreeing to pay people to make objections. And we hope this proposal can be viewed positively and you allow this proposal to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Brown. So that brings us to the end of speakers on this application, and we will now move to, again, a presentation which will be given again by Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This application relates to a full planning application for the erection of stables and a covered equine arena with associated parking and access road, and the site is land adjacent to Nightingale's Farm, Brickhouse Road, Coleraine. I've attached an aerial plan here just to really set this context of the location of the site to the north of Coleraine, so Coleraine village here. You can see the site up here, so Nightingale Farm is sort of annotated, and the parcel of land we're talking about is just to the east of it, where my cursor is hovering. So the location plan here, the site obviously outlined in red, and the rest of the site in their ownership in blue. There's an existing access here onto Brickhouse Road. We can see then that a new access track would run alongside this hedgerow to create this sort of area of hard standing. We've got the erection of this stable building and this covered arena. So this location plan, you can see that to the west are adjacent residential units, but otherwise to the north, east and the south the use is commercial, countryside. Again, another aerial photograph here just to sort of show you that in a bit more detail. So these three trees where my cursor is on the site plan sort of correlate with obviously what's on site. So you can see that the actual location for the riding arena and the stable building is here in this open field. This aerial photograph also helpfully shows the presence of the existing hedgerow and tree landscaping to the east and then to the south. There is also a public right-of-way that we'll see later on in some photographs that runs along the other side of the site and to this southern boundary. So just turning to the elevations now, this is the elevations for the barn, so the north and south elevation. You can see the scale of the building. It will be constructed in black weatherboarding above the brick plinth and it would have a natural slate roof. These materials are considered appropriate to this rural location. And just the east and the west elevation here, again, just showing you sort of that high quality design approach. And as already has been explained, the applicant has engaged in some detailed pre-applications with the council to create this sort of presence of this high quality stable building. Looking at the ground floor plan here, we can see that the building provides 8 stables. So within this sort of wing, together with a tack room and kitchen and a dry room. And then over here, you've got the tacking up bays, washdown area, feed room and a WC, and then a larger hay bedding store. There is an element of first floor accommodation here in terms of a storeroom, and that storeroom is provided within that sort of headroom space and provided with dormer accommodation, but there's also some roof lights there for natural light. The roof plan here again showing those dormers and the roof lights, and then this central roof light provision to create some natural lighting into the stable area. Turning to the covered riding arena now, you can see that it's a simple form building and it's open all sides. Again, here you can see the void on the end of flank elevations. And then just as you would expect, a level riding surface for that arena. The application's been submitted with some detailed site sections, so there is a natural level change across the site, so that the land sloped towards the east, and again you'll see that in some photographs in a moment. So the stable building is sited on the sort of higher land level, and then the land slopes down here, which is where the riding arena will be. So there is some change in levels, and the riding arena will be sort of sited within that to take account of that sort of natural fall in the land. So just looking at some photographs now, this is sort of at the access. So you've got the existing residential property to the left-hand side of the photo. You can see the sign for the public right-of-way, which is pointing sort of to run along that southern boundary, and you can just start to see that hedgerow tree boundary. And again, sort of similar view, just sort of showing you how that public right-of-way runs to the south. You've got this existing hard surfacing here, which is where the access would come in, and then run along where my cursor is. So now this photograph is taken from within the site, so sort of standing really sort of looking down towards the majority of the application site. So here is where the access track would be created. And again, sort of standing in the paddock now where the actual buildings would be sited. So sort of roughly where I'm standing taking this photograph would be where the stable building would be, and then beyond that, as you sort of go down that natural slope, would be the riding arena. And now a photograph here from sort of where the riding arena would be sited, looking back up. So you can see the residential property now to the right-hand side of the photo, and you can see that existing tree belt landscape screen that's to the south of the site, so on the left-hand side of this photo. So sort of pausing here really to pick up on what was said in the speakers is in terms of that landscape impact. So as set out in the committee report, officers have undertaken a thorough assessment in terms of that wider landscape impact, looking at the landscape character assessment. The landscape section for the council don't have any objections to the application, and officers consider this would be an appropriate development within the countryside. In terms of that planning balance and the summary, the proposal would introduce equestrian development in the countryside location, and it does meet the criteria of policy LPP 51, which relates to equestrian developments. The principle of development is therefore supported. Officers consider the development would result in economic and social benefits. In terms of the design, it would result in a high quality development with no harm to the wider rural locality, including to landscape character. Officers have reviewed the application in full in terms of that highway impact and are content that there would be no adverse impacts in terms of the highway. The Essex County Council as the Highway Authority have raised no objections to the application, and we would consider there be no harm to the protected lane in terms of its character or the traffic generation associated with the development. There'd be no adverse impact to neighbouring residential amenity, and the development would be acceptable in terms of impact upon landscape features. And lastly, there'd be no harm to ecology or wider flood risk and drainage, and therefore our recommendation this evening is that planning permission be granted subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for that detailed presentation. Councillor Spray.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank Lisa for the presentation. There's quite a complex background to this application. Could I just start by asking Lisa if there is any comment on the access issue, please, and the applicant's right of way? I know that that was raised as a problem, I think, when the application first version of it came forward last year, and it has been mentioned again this evening. Any clarification on that, please?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Spray. So the first application that was submitted incorrectly with the red line for the application. So as members will be aware, every planning application has to identify the site with the site location plan and identifies the site with the red line. That red line included land from recollection which was outside of the applicant's ownership and did not connect to the highway. So we weren't able to proceed to determine that application, which meant that the application needs to be withdrawn and resubmitted, which is why we've got a second application where the red line has now been drawn correctly, so all of the land is shown in the applicant's ownership.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Chris. So that, I think, has settled that particular point. I know this application is controversial locally, but we, as Planning Committee, have got to look at it from, planning perspective. Regards the traffic and Brickhouse Road, Highways have not raised any objection. So that immediately gives the committee a problem, if you like, in terms of using that as a reason for refusal. Highways are satisfied. One point they make is the road is already used by a variety of traffic, including farm vehicles, and the really relatively low additional traffic that's proposed to be used by the applicants, as far as Highways and our officers are concerned, is not significant in terms of impact on the road itself. I've listened very carefully to the comments from everybody this evening, and I've read the statements that were submitted. I note the comments by Mr. Keneally, and particularly regarding his son. I have close family members, young family members who are autistic, so I do know of the difficulties. However, I'm sorry to say that the impact of this application on his son, it's not a planning reason either for or against an application, and that applies to any application really. Personal circumstances of that nature, that we can't consider. One other point I wanted to make, well, a couple, but one I make on page 57 of the agenda, point 11.2.6, it mentions the concerns raised by some regarding potential for residential occupation within the stable building, and does suggest that the imposition of a condition is recommended. I may have missed it, Chairman, but looking through the conditions, I couldn't see that there was a specific condition on that point, but I may have missed it. If Lisa could just clarify that one for me, that would be helpful.
Yeah, just come back on that. So condition 11, the building hereby permitted shall be used solely for the stabling and exercising of horses, storage of associated equipment and foodstuff. There shall be no commercial livery, equestrian shows or competitions at the site, and no residential uses shall take place whatsoever. So we've covered that off.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that last bit. Okay, that's fine. I think my last comment is this is a very specialised equestrian activity. Mrs. Wade, I think, spoke quite powerfully, as did all the speakers this evening, but it is quite specialised. There is clearly a place for it and a purpose for it, and it does appear from all the comments made in the report that it is a suitable activity for the countryside. I know that a lot of work has gone into it between the applicant and the officers with regard to the quality of the design and so on, and I can't fault it, on that. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spree. Any other members like to comment? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got a couple of questions. There appears to be quite a disparity between the vehicle movement stated in the report, page 57, and what the objectives were saying, which was orders of magnitude higher. Could officers comment on that, please? In terms of principle, I partly agree with Councillor Brown. I mean, this is clearly quite difficult because we've heard from an objector on their personal circumstances and their fears of how that could affect their family, and that's unfortunately not a planning reason, but obviously we hear it very clearly, weighed against what is a facility which is very specialist for people who also have particular needs. So it's a difficult one. At the end of the day, though, we've got to look at this as a development in the countryside and whether that's acceptable in planning terms. So that highway issue is important. In terms of landscape impact, where do we stand with the fact that the landscape officer is referring back to a previous application but hasn't commented on this one? Officer said it's the same, but in planning terms, should we not have had an up-to-date response from the landscape officer? And finally, in terms of condition 9, if members are minded to grant, I'm just wondering that first line, whether it's ambiguous. So apparently the agent has said there's no floodlighting intended, and clearly that is an issue that the objectors have raised as a concern, and it would be obviously very prominent in the countryside if there were. It appears that wording appears to me to be ambiguous in the sense that it could mean that the condition doesn't apply to floodlighting because it excludes it. Do we still have policy support for it explicitly saying no floodlighting full stop as a separate condition? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass those questions over to Lisa.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'll treat them in reverse order if that's okay. So condition 9, yes, I think officers were quite mindful in terms of how to word the lighting condition. So you're right, the applicant has been quite clear that no floodlighting would be proposed. So condition 10 is imposed to specifically say there shall be no floodlighting. So that sort of sets that out.
My apologies, I should have.
That's okay.
I got to 9 and I thought, oh, it's in there, and I didn't do 10. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so condition 10 explicitly sets no floodlighting, and then condition 9 is sort of allowing that provision of other lighting to be there. In terms of landscape, yeah, you're right, that unfortunately, just due to resources, our landscape section weren't able to provide detailed comments to this application, but officers felt that was content in this specific approach just because the nature of the identical application, obviously, it was only withdrawn previously on that red line access issue, so the siting, the design, everything else remains the same. So I think the landscape section don't have a change in their view wouldn't change. There's been no change in circumstance on the site. There's been no change in policy. So I think that's content. We're content with that. In terms of the vehicle movements, the applicant has submitted fairly detailed explanation in terms of those traffic movements. So if you looked in on the actual file, it sort of sets out exactly what movements there would be in terms of staff, and obviously a number of the staff are on site already. It sets out sort of deliveries that would be associated with sort of food deliveries for the horses, sort of hay, all of those. Matters frequency of like manure being removed from the site. So I think we have had a look at that, and we are content that sort of that provision of 3-4 a day sort of sounds quite reasonable, and we're not in a position to dispute that. So yeah, that's sort of where that sort of vehicle movement comes from. But I do acknowledge the difference in the figures that others have stated.
Thank you. Councillor Bousland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In this application and the public speakers, we've actually had examples of somebody speaking against it because of a child of theirs is severely autistic, and most people sitting around this table know what that entails. But we've also heard from somebody speaking tonight about the benefits to disabled people in being able to use this service. Let me make it quite clear, if people are still not sure, we cannot take any health condition into consideration when considering a planning application, unfortunately, and it can't be used either for or against the application because it has no meaning as far as planning is concerned. I think Councillor Abbott has covered the lighting, because that does concern me, because it is in the countryside, and to have bright floodlights in this position would be absolutely awful. So I'm happy that we've got no floodlighting whatsoever. And again, same thing, the concerns of the vast difference that's been quoted tonight in vehicular movements. Now, I'm assuming that County Highways, when they looked at this application, would have taken that into consideration, or we'd like to think that they took it into consideration when viewing this application, because it is in the countryside. But I cannot believe for the life of me that that would have that many, even as excellent as this application is and the facility that is provided, I cannot for the life of me seeing it having that amount as what was quoted tonight, vehicular movements. So I'm happy and content with this application because it covered that there are no sound planning reasons why this should be refused.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other member wish to make a comment? Councillor Wright.
There's talk of saying there's no bridleways, but I assume that the horse is on that facility, where the quality that wouldn't be going riding out in the countryside or on the road systems. So the fact that there's no bridleways wouldn't impact on the development.
I think Councillor Wright, there's a neighbouring livery yard anyway where a lot of the objectors did actually talk about riding down the lane. So I think it is a sort of fairly established that there are people who ride.
This is not a livery yard. This is a high quality horses doing dressage. I wouldn't have thought those type of horses would normally be taken out onto the road system.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one, Councillor Wright. I will make a comment myself on this, actually, in that I do think equestrian facilities in the countryside, it's something that we anticipate in a rural district. We do have a specific policy for it, and this application meets the terms of that policy. I think one of the major concerns obviously has been the roads, which has been dealt with, but also the landscape character. And I think what was quite interesting for me from those photographs was the actual change in levels, and that the main arena will be at a significantly lower level, actually. And obviously there's a lot of work that's gone into design of the other buildings. So I myself am quite content with it. Does any other member wish to, before I ask somebody to move this application? Would anyone like to move this application? Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman, yes, I'll move officer's recommendation
Thank
for
you.
approval. Thank you.
And Councillor Bowes-Fent will second. So, members, this has been moved and seconded that we grant this application. All those in favour? And all those against? Abstentions? Thank you, members. That application has been granted. Bear with us, members. Will be with you in a second for the next application. We'll now move to our next application, which is application number 23/00362 REM Land at the Airfield, Earls Colne. And I think we have one speaker, I think. Let's check. Yes, no, one speaker, who's Mr. Hobbs. Thank you, Mr. Hobbs.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Councillors. My name is Ben Hobbs and I'm a Director of Hobbs Estates. I'm the third generation to work within our family business based at Earls Colne Business Park. I thought it would be prudent to provide some information about our business for the benefit of the new committee members here. We are a family-run property company that began trading over 60 years ago. Our business owns and manages employment space across Braintree District. The majority of this space is at Earls Colne Business Park, which, as many of you will know, is a major employment area for the district and houses over 40 different businesses who cumulatively employ an estimated 1,400 people. As a Director of Hobbs Estates, I'm pleased that these latest proposals are before you tonight with a recommendation for planning permission from your officers. This latest application at the business park forms part of our Forest Lane site. Members may recall that it has already been before you previously. Firstly, with the outline application for the overall site, and then for 2 reserve matters applications, all of which achieved a unanimous approval from this committee. Furthermore, the site sits within an employment policy area within the adopted local plan. The current application site was previously given reserve matters approval for external BH storage use at Planning Committee on the 22nd of March 2022. The reason that we are back here before you tonight is largely technical and arises from the subsequent reserve matters approval for the 2 new warehouses on this site by Planning Committee on the 20th of October 2022. As part of that later application, the area that was intended for beer open storage use was reduced to accommodate the buildings approved in that application. This application therefore seeks to rectify the agreed open storage area to take account of the new buildings. You will note from the photographs in the officer's presentation that we have already laid the concrete that forms this yard. This was commenced in exercise of the earlier approval for the external BH storage area. Following the subsequent reserve matters for the buildings and as part of the overall construction programme, the work to form the external yard was continued, albeit with a reduced area that is shown in the application before you tonight. This was done to avoid pausing the construction process, which would have A, incurred costs for cancelling orders and taking plant and labour off-site, and B, delaying the start date for the tenant. Given the planning history and the fact that we have already achieved a consent for the yard, we felt this was the most sensible thing to do and hope that you can appreciate why we took this decision. We have a tenant lined up and ready to take on the area proposed in the application. However, we are unable to sign the lease without the relevant consent. Your support today for what is essentially a variation of the previous reserved matters approval comprising a changed area to take account of our 2 new buildings will therefore enable this enable this and ultimately bring more business to the local economy. Given the planning history and the economic benefits this approval will generate, I do hope councillors will be able to agree with the Planning Officer's recommendation and vote in favour of approving the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Hobbs. We'll now move on to the presentation, which is going to be given by Janine, I believe. Have I got that right?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. This application is for a reserved matters application in relation to the outline consent in 2017, which was also varied in 2021 in relation to the maximum finished heights. The greater outline application included employment area up to 10,220 square metres of B1, B2 and B8 employment floor space. And this site relates to the southern parcel for external storage. As you can see on the location plan, this is the external storage area. To the north and south, which you'll see on the later plans, warehouses have actually been approved earlier this year at Planning Committee. And to the north, there's a building here and again a haulage yard. This is a site layout, so this would be the external storage yard. As previously alluded to by Mr Hobbs, originally there was a consent to have external storage to this whole length, but obviously this has been amended obviously because they have a permission which is already extant and substantially complete with a warehouse to the north and south. As you can see, there are trees to the eastern boundary and obviously the perimeter to the west, and obviously there's landscaping to the north and south within the existing warehouses. This is the main entrance to the access road from the business park. The vehicle access to the south, obviously this is the warehouse which is to the north of the external storage. The storage yard view to the south, the external storage yard view to the west, and the view to the north where the warehouse has been constructed. And this is the tree line to the east. The application site is located within a designated employment area. The principle of development has already been established for employment uses. There are no adverse impact arising from the proposed development and has been identified in terms of scale, appearance or layout, and there are no objections from any technical statutory consultees. Therefore, members are recommended to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. This has also got a slightly complicated, complex history to it, and I know it's taken a while to get to this stage, and I also know that's been a source of, I think, some frustration for the applicants. However, in my view, it's been worth waiting in order for it to get to committee with officer approval and officers being happy with it. And I think thanks go to Janine. I know she's worked very hard with the applicant to get it to this stage. I haven't got a great deal else to say on it, Chairman. I think for me it's fairly straightforward. It is a business park, so this is the sort of application you would expect. It's storage, so impact on the landscape is minimal. And actually there is very good cover, hedge and tree cover already in place around the site. The business park, I'm pleased to say, appears to be operating well. It does certainly contribute to the local economy. I know that the villages around it appreciate it, and it does provide employment. And there is a client ready and waiting and who actually really needs this storage area. So it certainly, from a business perspective, is a good thing. I don't think I have anything else to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Any other member wishing to make any comment? Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You may recall I raised quite a lot of questions about the lighting of this site because it's obviously adjacent to countryside. It's on the edge of the airfield commercial area. And I just wanted to commend really what the officers and the developers have done in bringing forward the site lighting restrictions document, which I looked at this afternoon. we talk a lot about design of lighting. Most lighting engineers design lighting as if they're in outer space, because they don't take account of things like scattering and reflection and real-world conditions. So what you need to do is both have the best possible design but also hours restrictions, and that's what the site lighting restrictions document does. And in very precise terms says, if members haven't read it, I'm sure some have, says when the lights shall come on and when they come off, and they will all be off at any time of year by 9 o'clock in the evening. And I think that's absolutely excellent, because it helps protect ecology, it helps protect amenity for people who might live in a wider area, and of course it saves energy. So I just wanted to say I think that's a positive thing, and if we can do it on more of these type of developments, it would be really good.
Thank you, Councillor. Very interesting comment. I'm sure that's been taken on board. Thank you. Councillor Bousfield.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I actually agree. It's a shame we can't do this on more sites, because on this, the applicant, and I hate to admit this because it makes me feel extremely old, but I'm now dealing with third generation, or listening to third generation of the family, which I did with Mr. Courtauld some weeks ago, and that does make me feel old. But with the applicant, to be fair, the tree planting on this site, the landscaping on this site and the lighting has been done in really good taste with thought of the countryside and where it is. So I would support it and quite happy to move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bousfield. Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Spray?
I'm quite happy to second that.
Oh, should we have Councillor Monday?
You're always looking right.
Sorry, Councillor Monday.
Over here, but I'm quite happy to support this application. Again, seeing that it's been worked through very well by Officer and the applicant, I can't fault it. The landscaping, the whole thing, very good.
Thank you, Councillor Monday. I shall try to look left as well. Right. So that has been moved and seconded. I don't think anybody else wants to make a comment. So all those in favour of granting this application? That again is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we'll now move on to, we're now going to go to the two tree preservation applications or orders. So the first one is item 6 on the agenda, which is Tree Preservation Order 012023, land adjacent to Meadowcroft Station Road, Earlscombe. And Chris is, we do have a speaker on this application, who is Mrs. Jennifer Smith. Sorry, Mrs. Smith.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to address the Planning Committee in relation to the TPO Preservation Order on the land adjacent to Station Road, Earlscombe. We originally addressed the project preservation of hedgerow on this piece of land in September 22, and unfortunately it seems to have taken an inordinate amount of time to establish our plans. The hedge we were given permission to remove is diseased. We were anxious to continue the planting line as per the plan originally submitted to you. Within the diseased hedge area, there are a number of trees, mainly self-sown, that have become diseased in generally poor condition. Ivy is beginning to evade the roots, and the roots of the trees are on a raised sandy base and will not sustain healthy growth long term. It is our aim to establish a straight boundary in line with a native hedge and a number of trees to enhance the area generally. Upon inspection, it can be noted that T3 on your plans has a bough that will become dangerous. T2 has a diseased bark. T1, we had no intention of removing, and T4, although established, is not a good specimen at all. The trees that you're adding TPOs are second-rate specimens, which within a few years will die back because of lack of nutrients and the environmental issues being so close to the road. We noticed that a bus stop has been erected along the pathway, and it would seem far more suitable to have a clear footpath to enable local people to walk safely upon their business along this road. We have been at Combe Valley Golf Club in excess of 20 years, during which time we have planted in excess of 300 native trees, and continue each year to replenish any dead or diseased trees in order to preserve the beauty that we so lovingly care for.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We're now on to move on to the officer presentation, which will be given by Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is the first of two TPO applications. So as referenced by Mrs. Smith, this first application relates to Station Road in Ells Cone, land adjacent to Meadowcroft. So I've got a brief presentation for you, so I'll just take you through the slides. So just to give you some context, the orange line there, and just to the bottom corner, you can see the trees subject to the provisional TPO. So we're on our way out of Ells Cone at this stage. We're on Station Road, and some members will recall there was a new residential development that was consented in this location here that wraps around the existing, which is again access off of Station Road. Slightly zoomed out version of the location plan, just primarily to show the location of the site in the context of the conservation area. So we're just beyond the area of the designated conservation area. And then a zoomed in plan which shows the 4 trees which are subject to the provisional TPO, so T1 to T4. I've got some photos in a second. Just to pick up some of the comments which were made during public question time on the condition of the trees. So, as referenced, there was an earlier hedgerow removal application, and as part of that application, the applicant submitted a full arboricultural statement with that, and this is actually an extract of that statement which deals with the condition of the trees that are subject to the provisional TPO. So I don't expect you to read the detail here because of the size of the text, but essentially the 4 trees subject to the provisional TPO are all categorised by the applicant's consultant as being good quality as category B trees, which we and our landscape advisors concur with. So just in terms of some context, so I've got a few photos just to show the sort of the amenity value that these trees provide. So this is on the approach, so coming out of Ells Cone towards Cone again. So you can see just highlighted there the first tree. Slightly more zoomed up version of the photograph that again shows the tree in context, and you can see the hedge in the foreground as well. Close-up picture of T1 and T2, so T1 on the left and T2 on the right, and T3 and T4. And again, you will note, so this is a view looking back. So we're standing on the other side of the road. The trees are on the left-hand side of the road at this stage. And just a couple of photographs to show the location of the footpath. So particularly both photographs to the left actually shows the width, and you can see 2 people walking along that stretch of the footpath. But the right-hand side photograph also shows that actually the desire to increase the width of the footpath could be accommodated by taking some of that verge, and with the removal of the hedgerow, that could potentially be done. We'd want to be satisfied in terms of sort of method statement, in terms of the works in close proximity to those trees, but it shows that there is potentially the ability to still achieve that objective. And then just a last photograph, I think, just of the falls again, just in terms of context. So as outlined within the report, the provisional tree preservation order was served on the basis that the trees are considered worthy of preservation and in the interest of visual amenity of the area. Because objections have been received to the provisional TPO, it's for the planning committee to determine whether to confirm the order or whether or not effectively the order would fall away. So the officer recommendation is that the provisional tree preservation order is confirmed, and that's on the basis of the amenity value of the trees and that they are worthy of preservation. I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to make a quick declaration because actually Mrs. Jennifer Smith is known to me and has been for some time, and also I have been to the golf club on various social occasions as well, so I just want to add that to record. I'll stay in vote.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer. Councillor Bowers.
So can I follow suit and also declare that Mrs. Smith is known to me as well?
Thank you, Councillor. So first of all, Councillor Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not knowledgeable enough about trees and what harm comes to them, and I'm not sure that Mr. Padgett is going to be able to answer this, but it's obvious that the tree has been, or at least one of them has been strangulated with ivy. What effect does this have on the tree?
So in terms of the condition of the tree, and that's probably the extent to which I can answer your question, Councillor Bowers-Flint, on that front. So in terms of the condition, this is not something which is new. Obviously, the ivy's been established. So in terms of the condition survey that were done of the trees and the inspections that's been carried out by our own tree and landscape officer in assessing the merits of this in serving the original provisional TPO, but also then making the recommendation as part of the agenda papers this evening, we're satisfied that the condition of the tree is worthy of preservation. In terms of the long-term impact of the ivy, I must admit I couldn't answer or give you a clarification on that, I'm afraid. But in terms of the health of the trees, we're satisfied that this that the trees would be worthy of preservation, and we feel as officers that the amenity value that they offer along Station Road on the as you go out of Eltscone, it makes it worthy of preservation.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm a bit perplexed as to why the hedge needs to come out at all, or any of the trees there. I mean, it's right on a boundary. It's not in the way of anything, is it? The path is clearly walkable. You've got two people side by side. I don't think any of the hedge needs to come out to widen the path, because it looked to me as if you've got a couple of foot there of sort of material which I believe in highway terms needs siding out, where you sort of just shovel it back and you could probably gain another foot. So I'm really perplexed as to why there's any issue at all here. The trees looked in reasonably good health to me. I haven't been to see, I do know this, I haven't been there recently, but from the photographs we were shown, they look to be in reasonable condition. I mean, on ivy, it really depends on the tree. Some big trees are a fantastic host for ivy, and ivy is really good for a lot of different types of wildlife. Other trees, if they're weakened, the extra weight can cause them to fall over. They have to be in a very poor condition normally for that to happen, so it varies. But on the basis of what we've seen, Madam Chairman, I'm very happy to move that the TPO is upheld.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Wright. Any other member like to comment at all? Okay, well, it has been moved by Councillor Abbott and seconded by Councillor Wright that we confirm this TPO. All those in favour? You should. Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? Thank you, members. That TPO has been confirmed. Just wait for Mrs. Spray to come back for the next application. Right, members, we'll now move on to the next application that we're going to deal with, which is another tree preservation order, this time number 022023, land of Bournebridge Hill, Greenstead Green. We don't have any speakers on that application, so we'll move on to presentation, which will be given by Chris again.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the second application, this one over in Housestead, technically within the ward of Greenstead Green, land east of Bournebridge Hill. Members will be or some members will be very familiar with this site. So there have been several fairly recent applications for new development on the edge of Housestead in this particular location. So I've just put the plan up, which shows the, again, in sort of an orangey brown, the area in which we have effectively surveyed, and the review of this has essentially come on the back of the previous applications and the desire to ensure that these particular trees and also the area of woodland, which I'll show you in more detail, is preserved and retained, again for their amenity value, and particularly from the approach from Housestead, but also from the edge of the new area of town that effectively would be created. So again, a slightly more zoomed out part of Housestead. So you can see this is on the southern side here as you come out of Housestead. So if you're travelling from Housestead to Braintree, you would be going by this site. The area of
on that previous map, it doesn't include the new estate, and therefore the map is out of date.
Perhaps you can just point out where the new estate is on the map.
Yeah, so the area of the Oak Road development, so you can actually see, you might just be able to make out reference here to Oak Road, so you have the existing residential development in this parcel, but then the subsequent, so as explained, the area of search subject to this is in this browny orange line. In these areas, we've had more recent applications for new development, but Councillor Finkin is correct that the area outside of it by Housestead has already previously been developed. Am I okay to continue?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, so the next slide shows the area of search and the specific 24 individual trees which are subject to the provisional order. And then what we have in this location here is the area of woodland. And this is actually the only part of the objection that's been received relates essentially to this area of woodlands. The 24 trees which were subject to the provisional TPO have not been objected to. So I will focus in on that as the sort of the primary issue. So just by some historical context, so going back to 1897, the area of this woodland is first shown on mapping. We then also have slightly a later map of 1924, and bringing up to date, it just shows, so that this is more of a context coming along Bournebridge Hill, but just shows some of the larger specimens. In terms of the area of woodland, so we're just going to have a quick walk through. So this is on the approach from effectively the Housestead side, so starting at the top and moving southwards. So the image on the left is as you go through the gates, and then as you pass the gates is the image on the right, so as you're walking through. And then more into the sort of the area of the enclosed by the area of woodland. The photos on the left and the right showing the establishment of the various existing trees. And again, moving through again. So you can see it's a very established area of woodland, and it's for that reason essentially why this particular designation is made within the provisional TPO. So it's not necessary to identify individual specimens, it's the actual area itself, and it's the amenity value that this area effectively affords as to why we're recommending the confirmation of the TPO and that this area is protected. Just by way of context, the area of yellow highlighted on that plan is facing the farm area, and this was one of the areas of concern in terms of its proximity and the potential need for maintenance and so forth. But hopefully the photographs show the amenity value in the context. As officers, we feel it's right to seek to preserve this for its amenity value, and potentially any works that would need to be carried out can effectively be undertaken on a sort of a case-by-case basis once the TPO is in place. So again, the officer recommendation this evening is to confirm the provisional TPO, again in the interest of amenity, And just to highlight again that the area of objection focused really primarily in on the area of the woodland rather than the 24 individual tree specimens that were also subject to the provisional TPO. Happy to answer any questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, I think I was understanding that it was just a small section of that woodland that the objector was concerned about. Is that correct? Not the whole thing? Yeah. Members, would anybody like to comment on this application? Councillor Finkin?
Yes, I think we in Housestead would welcome the recommendation and support the officer's recommendation. It's very important, I think, that all the landscape features of the area are retained as far as possible, despite our disappointment that the original application was passed or was overturned by the inspectors. Especially in view of concerns about the ways in which the previous developments took place and the numbers of trees that were lost and landscape features were lost during those developments. I think it's very important that we do retain as far as possible all the landscape elements that we can with these new developments.
Thank you, Councillor Munday.
So just to add to that, I did the walkabout with Neil Jones for the defence of the land of Bournebridge Hill application, and this is quite picturesque. It really is a nice area to walk down, and it in fact became our only defence come the end. So I, for one, would like to see this supported and the TPO put in place.
Thank you, Councillor Munday. I also walked down that. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I very much agree with everything that's just been said. I think we're going to have to do more of this. As I have said many times, both at this committee and in public, the loss of trees in this district on development sites is catastrophic. I have documented them over the years with photographs. We have just lost a whole load of trees in Cressing in July. Clearfell just cut down. I assume they're doing the surveys for birds. But it's painful. Basically, I wouldn't trust developers as far as I could metaphorically do certain things on. So I think we have to get in there and protect them where we think there's a risk. So I 100% support this.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Schwinn, then Councillor Bassfin.
Thank you. I would just like to agree with the officer's comments about the amenity value of the area as described by, and as we've seen from those photographs, and of those of us that know that area, it is important with the amount of development that's gone on there, and it's going to be an added bonus, and I think it is right to that, and I'm quite happy to move officer's recommendation on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwinn. Councillor Bassfin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I support this. Can I ask a question? Do we know what that metal container is?
In truth, no, but I'm assumed it's used for storage. I did discuss that point actually with the Tree and Landscape Officer, and our understanding is it's been there for some period of time, judging by its condition and appearance. So what it's actually used for, I'm unclear, but it's obviously been there for some time within the area of woodland.
Okay. And to go on from what Councillor Abbott said, that we've just lost some trees in Cressing, we actually lost 50 trees 2 years ago that have never been mentioned in this chamber, some of which were 100 years old. And the ones that were replaced by the developer were dead within 6 months. So we have no trees whatsoever now. So I agree with him.
Councillor Munday.
I was happy to move, but having Councillor Swear do that, I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Richard, did you want to speak? Or?
Very briefly, just to add, whilst obviously we grant permissions in favour and presumption of sustainable developments, it's also right that when we've got the opportunity to keep pockets of woodland that we use jurisdiction to be able to do so. I spent many a day in that woodland when I was a youngster growing up, when I lived in Housestead, and if we lost that as part of the overall development, it would be a real shame. So happy to support the officer's recommendation to keep the TPO. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I just would like to comment, members are not aware, but I think our normal landscaping conditions now do require irrigation. It's a standard now, isn't it, that we require irrigation of new planting. Right, so that has been moved to second that we confirm this TPO. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we'll now allow Councillor Bowers and Councillor Ritchie to leave the chamber, and then we'll move on to last application, which is application number 23/010164, which is an application at 4 Crittall Drive, Braintree, where the applicant is the District Council. And that presentation is, we have no speakers, so we'll move straight to the presentation by Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members. I'm here to present an application seeking a change of use from a B2 use to a B8 external storage use at 4 Crittall Drive at Braintree, which is located on the Springwood Industrial Estate. The application is being determined at Planning Committee as the applicants are Braintree District Council. Some members may recall an application for prior notification to demolish a building which existed previously on the site, which was determined at committee at the end of last year. Since this application was determined, the building has been demolished and the site is now vacant. Although the intention is to redevelop the site, this is not likely to happen for a few years, and to ensure the plot continues to make a contribution to the local economy, it is proposed to use the plot for open storage leased to a third party. It is understood that pending planning permission being granted tonight, an occupier has already been secured. The application site is outlined in red. The site is located within the settlement boundary for Braintree and Bocking, and also within an employment policy area to which policy LPP3 of the adopted local plan relates. This policy restricts the permitted uses to those deemed appropriate for an area such as Springwood Industrial Estate. Both the existing use, which is B2 General Industrial, and the proposed use as a B8 Storage and Distribution use are accepted by this policy. This map shows the location of the site in red on a larger scale. You can see the running track and table to the east, the recycling centre is further to the north, and the roundabout with Rain Road is located further south. There are examples of open storage on the industrial estate already, for example at Fuel Care at Crittall Drive and at Build Base on Tamdown Way, which are both indicated in yellow on this plan. Onto some photos. This photo shows the application site. The building in the distance fronts Warner Drive. There are no physical alterations proposed to the site as part of this application. This photo shows the remainder of the site and the neighbouring unit at 6 Crittall Drive. This photo shows the access to the site. It's worth noting as well, highways have been consulted and haven't raised any objections to the application. This photo shows the unit opposite to the site at 3 Crittall Drive. And this photo shows the entrance to the plot of Fuel Care at 5 Crittall Drive. And towards the opposite end of Crittall Drive, towards Crittall Courtway. Onto assessment, as I mentioned, the application site is located within the settlement boundary for Braintree and also located within a designated deployment policy area. Policy LPP3 of the adopted local plan protects uses within these areas, but the proposed B8 storage use is permitted by this policy. The proposed change of use would allow the site to continue to make a contribution to the local economy rather than remaining vacant whilst the long-term redevelopment plans are being prepared. And officers are satisfied that the application is acceptable in terms of principle. As I mentioned, there's no physical alterations proposed to the site, and officers acknowledge that the character of the site would change temporarily, however, it would not become out of keeping with the surrounding industrial estate. The site is served by an existing access which is designed to be used by HGVs, and the proposal complies with the adopted parking standards. There are no residential dwellings nearby, and neighbouring units would not be inhibited by the proposed change of use. And therefore, officer's recommendation is that the application is granted subject to a condition limiting the permission for a temporary 3-year period, and this is outlined in condition number 1 of the agenda. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sam. You covered everything in that. Thank you. Members, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A very straightforward application, though I am tempted. I think I saw a flooring there. potential historic interest, whether I should ask for an archaeological condition, but I don't dare at this late at night. So, yeah, I'm happy to move Officer recommendation as is.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any member wish to speak? Councillor Glasford?
Did Councillor Abbott move it? Yeah, I second it. And I actually noticed that flooring as well. And I zoomed in and I actually don't think it is architectural importance. So I'm quite happy to do that.
No, doubt it. Any other members wish to speak? Okay, so it has been moved and seconded that we grant this application. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. And that brings us to the end of this evening's meeting. Look forward to see you next time.